President Donald Trump said on Tuesday, July 28th, that he has no interest in revising the 6-year-old US-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, stating that the trade deal matters far more to Mexico and Canada than to the US. The position comes as Canada's trade minister prepares to fly to Washington this week for fresh talks amid escalating tariffs on both countries' goods. Welcome to another episode of Regtalks. Join us as we explore the threats to one of the biggest trade deals in North America.
That's definitely not your typical headline. Canada's trade minister prepares for urgent talks in Washington, and it feels like the future of USMCA is hanging in the balance. We'll break down what Trump's stance means, how the deal's review works, and what's likely to happen next.
So here's our roadmap. First, we'll unpack Trump's approach and motivations, then dive into the rising tariffs and how they're shaking up industries. Next, we'll look at the negotiation dynamics. Who's talking, who's sidelined, and finally, what interim agreements might look like. Ready to jump in?
Absolutely. Let's tackle Trump's bold statements and see why he's so confident about walking away from the USMCA.
It's striking how President Trump's latest comments, Mexico and Canada need us, we don't need them, really shift the tone. He's brushing off the USMCA review like it's a minor inconvenience.
That's a big pivot compared to previous administrations. Instead of seeing USMCA as mutually beneficial, Trump's framing it as leverage, almost a bargaining chip. He's betting the US can go it alone, or at least push Mexico and Canada into concessions.
But is that realistic? With so much cross-border trade, it feels risky. US companies rely on Canadian and Mexican supply chains, and vice versa. Yet Trump's approach seems to be take it or leave it.
He's not just talking tough, he's acting. The review process has triggered a decade-long wind-down unless all three nations renegotiate, and Trump's not rushing to the table.
That actually reminds me of the tariff storm unleashed lately. The US slapped 25% duties on vehicles and trucks from Mexico and Canada, plus a whopping 50% on steel and aluminium. That's hitting key industries hard.
And it doesn't stop there. About $20 billion in Canadian imports from beer to hockey sticks are now under fresh tariffs. The administration used an old provision, Section 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930, blaming Canada's moves and holding firm on dairy market concessions.
For businesses, it's chaos. Automakers, breweries, even plywood suppliers are scrambling. Retaliatory tariffs from Canada and Mexico aren't helping either. It's turned into a tit-for-tat spiral.
Exactly. And while Trump sees this as leverage, the fallout is real. Jobs, prices, and supply chains are all on shaky ground.
Funny you say that, because negotiations aren't just complicated, they're lopsided. The US trade team just finished a round of talks with Mexico, but Canada's been left out of formal discussions so far.
It's almost like Canada is waiting in the wings, hoping to get a seat at the table. Officials are keeping in touch with US Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, but most talks are happening in the background.
Meanwhile, Greer made it clear no full overhaul this year. Instead, the US is pushing for separate interim deals with each country. The more complex issues, like automotive rules and labor standards, are getting punted to 2027.
That's a pretty big shift from the usual trilateral approach. It divides and conquers, but also risks fragmentation and uncertainty.
Now, Canada's chief negotiator, Janice Charette, and Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc are heading to Washington. It's the first face-to-face since these tariffs landed, and Prime Minister Mark Carney insists negotiations will intensify.
Yet Trump's skepticism hangs over everything. Even after agreeing to talk, his latest remarks suggest he's not expecting compromise. Canada has to navigate both public pressure and private channels, hoping for some breakthrough.
It's tough when the US is signaling it doesn't need the deal. Canada may need to offer fresh concessions or creative solutions, but there's a risk Trump won't budge.
Still, this visit could be a turning point. If Canada can make headway, maybe it'll change the tone, or at least stabilize things for industries caught in the crossfire.
After 2 rounds of tariff, chess, and deadlock talks, The US says it'll pursue interim agreements by year's end. That means some fixes, but not a full overhaul. Complex issues are left for later.
That's a double-edged sword. On one hand, it gives industries some breathing room. On the other, it leaves uncertainty hanging until at least 2027. Mexico and Canada have to decide. Do they accept piecemeal deals or push for a comprehensive fix?
Right now, everyone's weighing their options. The US is betting its leverage will force concessions, but it risks souring relationships and destabilizing markets.
We're watching for signs of compromise, but so far, Trump seems content to let the clock run down. The next few months will be crucial.
Let's wrap up with 3 takeaways. First, Trump's tough stance is reshaping North American trade and forcing Mexico and Canada to rethink their strategies. Second, escalating tariffs are hurting key industries on all sides. Third, interim agreements might offer temporary relief, but leave big questions unresolved.
If you're a business owner or policy watcher, your next step is to stay informed, track developments, understand how tariffs could impact your sector, and be ready to adapt. The landscape is changing fast.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll keep you updated as negotiations evolve and as new deals or setbacks emerge. Stay sharp and catch us next time for deeper dives on global trade.
See you soon, and remember, every trade decision ripples through our daily lives. Until next episode.